Welcome. Lock your doors. Turn off the lights and try to get comfortable while I Reddit you a story. Tonight's story is called, Does This Taste Funny to You? The first haunted house we visited was unbelievably boring. 3 small rooms, a fog machine and 1 plastic skeleton. Lauren and Mitch were waiting outside when Melanie and I exited. People were screaming on rides all around us across the pier, but Lauren and Mitch looked half asleep. Performers in colorful costumes wandering through the crowd. The pier was part amusement park, part carnival. Melanie convinced us all to stop for funnel cake. The man behind the booth was dressed like a clown, complete with a purple and yellow pinstripe jumpsuit. In fact, all the food sellers were dressed like clowns, an entire neon rainbow of white-faced, red-nosed jesters. I suppressed a shiver. There was something surreal about clowns grinning and giggling while handing out pretzels. An amazing smell drifted my way on the breeze. Savory, smoky meat. I looked for the source of the smell. 3 stalls down from the funnel cake, place was a rundown booth with sausages, kebabs, and chunks of steak hanging down from the awning. Another clown was standing behind the counter. He was staring at my group, at me. I glanced up at the banner above the stall. Does this taste funny to you? There's another haunted house on the boardwalk, Trevor, Melanie said, chomping on her funnel cake. It's down by the inlet. I looked away from the clown and the meat. I don't know if I feel like another haunted house. I've been to that one. There's not much better than the one here on the pier, Mitch said. There's a bunch of empty dark rooms, with some mops hanging from the ceiling and enough junk to give you an infection if you take a deep breath. Lauren shook her head. I know the one you're talking about, but I think they completely renovated it last winter. Added a whole second level, changed all the rooms. I've heard it's actually decent now. Doubt it, Mitch said. Everyone looked to me for my vote. Why not? Can't be worse than the bargain basement of horror we just went through. I turned back to see if the clown at the meat stall was still watching us. The booth was empty. We left the pier and made our way down the boardwalk to get in line for the haunted house. The Maniac Mansion. The attraction was separate from the pier, so we need to pay to ride. Mitch balked when he saw. The price was $6 a rider, but Lauren half charmed, half shamed him into coming along. Once we paid and approached the entrance, Lauren and Mitch took the lead car, while Melanie and I got into the one behind it. The cars were all shaped like small coffins, complete with demonic faces, bats and skulls carved into the wood. The ride operator strapped us in, and we waved the all clear. Remember, they aren't allowed to touch you, he said, as our car began to move along the rail. What? I shouted back, but the man didn't answer. Mitch and Lauren disappeared through a swinging red door. Our car clunked along slowly. 30 seconds later, we went through the same door into pitch blackness. It was cold inside the haunted house, almost freezing. At first, the sensation was pleasant. We'd spent the last 3 hours sweating on roller coasters and merry-go-rounds, but the chill soon became uncomfortable. Melanie and I scooted closer together, and I put my arm around her shoulders. Nothing happened in the first room. No lights turned on, no sound. We rolled silently through the darkness. Melanie let a nervous giggle as we hit a slight drop. Our coffin glided through several layers of heavy curtains, and I'll admit that I might have flinched when the fabric brushed my arm. This is already better than the other haunted house. Nothing's happened, Melanie said, shivering. Yeah, the atmosphere as we went through the last curtain and immediately triggered an air horn. Red lights flashed twice, revealing a room full of mannequins looming around us. Then it was dark again. Oh my God, Melanie whispered. I'm shaking. I swallowed, grateful that the air horn was loud enough to drown out my scream. Yeah, freaky. The next few rooms at least had some light. Animatronic skeletons and corpses leapt out at us from behind the shadows. We traveled through a tunnel of spinning neon paint that ended in a sharp drop. Hidden fans blew cold air and water on us as we rolled through a room filled with fog. Just as we were about to exit the fog, I felt a strange sensation. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. I turned around and saw a shadow approaching us through the mist. A man in a hockey mask. He walked quickly, and my brain froze. My first thought was that he was another writer who left his car for some reason to explore the haunted house. The man came close, noticed me, watching, then slipped around to Melanie's side. She didn't realize he was there until he was parallel to the car. When she did see him, she shrieked. The man never said a word. He followed us for a few steps, then opened a hidden door in the wall and went inside. What the hell? Melanie gasped. My heart was trying to burst out of my ribcage, but I thought about what the writer-operator said before we started. Remember, they aren't allowed to touch you. Live actors, I said, laughing a little. They must have added them in when they did the renovations. Melanie was nearly curled into a ball, pressed into my side. Warn me if you see any other creeping up on us, okay? She asked. The actors were good. A woman in a white dress caught us by surprise as we rounded a corner. A big man caused both of us to jump when he revved up a chainsaw. I thought he was an animatronic until we got close. We were just starting to get used to the idea that any of the displays would come to life when our coffin suddenly entered a brightly lit room. He was completely white, with only 2 figures and a chair. The first man was dressed like a werewolf. He lay face down in a puddle of blood, his leg twitching. None of his feet were severed at the ankle. A clown was seated on the wooden chair nearby, chewing on the foot. Unlike the other actors, the clown's costume was ragged, dirty, held together with patches. He wore a curly pink wig and a mask that showed white cheeks, blue eyes, and a scarlet nose. The mask left his mouth open. His teeth were crooked and stained red. It was the same clown from the meat stall on the pier. The clown didn't move from his chair, and we rolled by in our car. He only lifted one hand, and he waved. That was the worst one yet, Melanie said, looking away. I turned towards her. That body on the ground looked awfully real for a prop. I whispered, "Stop trying to scare me," she said, punching my arm. I looked back over my shoulder and choked down a yelp when I saw the clown. He was standing now, staring at us. The clown began to walk, then run, then sprint towards us. We exited through a sliding door before he caught up, but just at the last moment, his fingers brushed my shoulder. "This ride needs to be over now," Melanie said. We were in another pitch-black tunnel, moving slowly. I thought I heard the thud of running footsteps coming from somewhere on my left, then past us and kept going. A few seconds of silence, and then we heard the screams. It was a haunted house. We heard various yelps and curses and shouts from other writers in different parts of the building. But nothing like this. Nothing as loud, nothing as panic. "I want off," Melanie whispered, squeezing my arm in a vice grip. "It's all fake. I promised. We're almost." Our car came to a halt with a crash that threw us forward against the seatbelts. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah. Christ, it's so dark." "What do we hit?" "Another car. I think maybe there was a malfunction with the track. Hold on, we need some light." I started patting my pockets, trying to remember where I'd put my cell phone. Something gurgled. I froze. The sound continued, a wet, sucking noise, like someone slurping. "Hello," Melanie said. "Is someone there?" I finally found my cell phone and I snapped on the flashlight app. The light was limited, a little circle that I could point around the room, but it was enough to confirm that we hit another car, one that was stalled on the track. I swept the beam across the back of the coffin, and Melanie screamed. Lauren was staring back at us. Her throat slit so deep that her head was only hanging on by her spine and a few inches of skin and muscle. She was the source of the gurgling noise. Her eyes were unfocused, but she seemed to be looking directly at us. My hand was shaking so badly. The flashlight beam jumped and fell like a wasp caught in a mason jar. I shined it away from Lauren and swept it back and forth. I stopped when I found Mitch. Jesus. No. Melanie sobbed. Mitch was on the ground in the tunnel. A hunting knife with a black handle was buried in his neck to the hilt. The clown from the previous room was hunched over my friend's body. When my flashlight hit him, the man looked back at us. I heard Melanie throw up, but I didn't take my eyes off the clown. He was holding Mitch's severed arm, the hand covered in bite marks. The clown chewed whatever he had in his mouth and swallowed. Then he lifted the arm in my direction and gestured for me to take it. "Does it taste funny to you?" he asked. I grabbed Mel's hand and I pulled her from the cart. We ran down the black tunnel. She was screaming. Or maybe I was. It was panic, a panic sprint, until we hit the warm air and lights of the boardwalk. Then we kept running. We kept running until we were on the beach. And that's when Mel finally made us stop so she could call 911. By the time the cops got to the haunted house, there was no sign of anything, not even the bodies. It's been weeks, and I still can't sleep. Whenever I nod off, I have the same dream. A dark room, a smell like old pennies, a wet floor, and then a voice in the blackness. Does this taste funny to you? That wraps up the story for tonight. If you're craving more, check out my other stories. Thank you for listening, and have sweet dreams.